Let's take you back now to the BRICS Summit, where security has been tightened for the summit underway at the Sandton Convention Centre north of Johannesburg. My co-anchor for the agenda, Aldrin Sampear, is at the media centre there, and he's going to be talking to the Minister of Agriculture, Thoko Didiza. Aldrin, a good morning to you. I think before we even get into the discussion that you're going to be having, talk to me about the atmosphere that you're seeing at the Sandton Convention Centre this morning.
Well, an electrifying atmosphere, considering also the opening of the BRICS Business Forum yesterday, and some of the remarks that came out there, especially from the heads of states, from the BRICS member states. One of those ones, of course, what the Prime Minister of India had to say about the collaboration between the various countries. Also looking at the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, of course, his contribution was virtually. And one of the critical issues there is, of course, the issue around the grain deal, stressing that Russia is willing to go back to the grain deal, but only if all the prerequisites that Russia has put on the table have been met. And also an opportunity, as the Minister of Small Business Development said yesterday, was an opportunity for businesses in this country, in South Africa, to actually network with all the other delegates who are here, coming from various countries, to participate in this conference. It is, of course, the first in-person summit that is taking place since 2019. Remember, because of the COVID-19 restrictions that were put in place. But here's an opportunity for business people to actually come and have conversations. Another one is, of course, the push to expand a BRICS, not only expand BRICS in terms of the number of countries that are part of BRICS, but also expand BRICS' mandate not to solely focus on economic development and trade, but also on issues relating to resolving conflicts and mediating within conflicts. And later on today, we will hear from the presidents as well as the Prime Minister. These are the heads of state and government of the BRICS member state who went on to that retreat that you spoke about earlier on, to give us an indication on what decisions have been taken following the discussions that they had late last night. So we'll hear about that a bit later on. They are expected to take to the podium at around 11 o'clock for that all-important family photo as well, where you'll find the five heads of state, including, of course, Vladimir Putin, who would be joining the conference virtually. Let's speak now to the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development in the country, Thoko Didiza. Minister, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's start off with the state visit by Xi Jinping, the President of China. One of the agreements that was signed yesterday is in relation to export to China. Tell us about that deal and also what it would mean for the avocado export industry in South Africa.
Thank you very much, Sampear, for this interview, as well as your viewers. One of the things, as you say, is that the cooperation on BRICS has been looking at issues of economic development as well as trade. South Africa has been trading with a number of BRIC countries, particularly on agricultural commodities. One of the things that happened yesterday, let me say before yesterday, actually, China has lifted its ban on our beef. As you know, that after we had the challenge of foot and mouth last year, there was a temporary ban that were imposed by a number of countries. China has actually lifted the ban last week. Yesterday, we signed a protocol on avocado. What this means is that South African avocado farmers can now have market access in the Chinese market for their export.
Okay, and with the export of avocado to China, which of course is a huge market in terms of its population, what does it mean for the industry in terms of numbers and also the ability to create a network and also the logistics that would ensure that these avocados do land in China while still in a fresh state and don't find themselves at our various ports waiting to be exported?
Well, South Africa has been exporting to China our lemons. For instance, we started in the early 2000s with the export of apples. So in terms of agricultural commodity, the protocols will actually indicate the temperatures that such commodities would have, and our import and export inspection division in our department that also deals with the plant health as well as animal health, which is phytosanitary, will then look at ensuring that we do not have our commodities arriving at a country of destination not in good shape. So we manage that, and we do that working closely with the importing country.
On the beef ban that was imposed, one of the concerns that was raised last year as well is, of course, the unilateral decision that was taken by China to impose this particular ban. But is there a way to say between the two countries, as an example, or any of the BRICS member states, to say that is there a committee that can look into bans that would be imposed and try to prevent those bans being imposed, considering the impact that it would have on the country that's actually supposed to be exporting some of these commodities, including beef?
There is, but I think it's important for us to clarify. The ban last year was not a unilateral ban. When a country, it doesn't matter whether in the BRICS countries or not, once you have picked up a disease on your plants or on your animals as a country, you are obliged to report to the international bodies that regulate the import and export of agricultural commodities. In case of animal commodities, you will report to the OIE. Immediately once OIE receive that report, they send the report to all countries who will then know that South Africa has this challenge. They will then engage with you to understand how are you managing the disease, how are you controlling it that it doesn't spread, and if there are possibilities of having compartments which are not affected from which you can import. On that basis, then countries will take a precautionary measure where they will stop importing from that country. And South Africa does that as well. For instance, when there has been a challenge of avian flu on chickens in Europe or even in the US, we have imposed temporary bans, and until such time we are convinced that there are no possibilities of spreading such a disease, we then lift the ban. So in this instance, that's exactly what happened. And it's important for me to also indicate that in 2019, when we had such a problem, and 2020, actually China compartmentalized. They said, okay, we understand where your problems are, in what province in your country, but in the rest of the provinces you don't have a problem, so we are not going to import from this province where you are still battling the disease. We will import from other countries. And they did that because they were convinced that our system is actually working in disease management as well as in disease control.
Yeah. Wandile Sihlobo, who is with the Agricultural Business Chamber, writes in the Daily Maverick that one of the biggest concerns that needs to be addressed during this conference as well is the issue around the heightened tariffs that are being asked by countries like, for instance, China as well as India. This is now the importing tariffs, and also to reduce the red tape that allow for the importation of these products. Is that a possibility at all? And from the conversations that you've had with these countries, what would you say are some of the hindrances towards increasing exports to these two countries, especially China as well as India, considering how big their populations are?
To be honest, we haven't had serious challenges with those two BRICS member countries, India and China, in respect of our export. The only challenge that is that sometimes with regards to different countries, they would actually open up on a number of commodities that you can export to them. Other countries will opt for a single protocol signing where they would look at one commodity, and once they're satisfied, they will then allow you for that specific commodity to enter into their countries. Others obviously would have a wide approach. So that is the issue that particularly with China we are engaged on. The other challenge with respect to India, which we have raised, has been the ban that they've put on the export of rice. because in our view, that will have an impact on a number of importing countries, including South Africa, given also the challenges of importation of wheat and other agricultural, chemicals, particularly from the Black Sea, given the challenges that are in Ukraine and Russia right now.
And what was India's response to that? Because the argument that they made around the rice export ban was because they're trying to control the cost of the grain within the country itself, and also considering the high cost of living within India as well as the inequality levels. What was their response to the argument that you put forward?
The talks are still going on between ourselves and India on that matter, so we haven't found a resolution as yet.
No resolution as yet. A final one, Minister, is on fertilizers. We know because of the Russia's invasion in Ukraine, the impact that has had on the people in the agricultural business seeking fertilizers. What's the big plan going forward? Is South Africa able to be self-sustainable when it comes to fertilizers as well as essential grains?
Well, let me start on the last one, on the grains. South Africa, when it comes to grains, particularly our staple, which is maize, we are self-sufficient. Even this year, we've actually had a bumper season despite some of the challenges on the rain season that we've had. We have still had a very good season. With regards to wheat, we do have a production on wheat in the areas such as Western Cape. Even though we're not self-sufficient, we therefore import. So we do importing from a number of countries, including in the Black Sea. With respect to fertilizer, you would know that South Africa does have a fertilizer company, which is a state-owned one, Thoko. It is producing fertilizer, but maybe over time it has not focused only on fertilizer production, because there have also been other countries that have been importing fertilizers such as Omnia and others. And with respect to the challenges that are going on globally, we are working with the DTIC to look at how we assist Thoko and including Sasol, some of the players who have been present in the fertilizer industry, to actually increase their capacity for production, because we do believe that as we were in the past, we can still be self-sufficient in fertilizer production as a country.
A final one, Minister. What's the case for the agricultural sector around the expansion of BRICS? South Africa has said, the President has made that clear, that they are in support for the expansion of BRICS to allow new members in. We're still waiting on the announcement on what that decision is. But what's the business case for the agricultural sector? And perhaps, Minister, you heard, is there going to be that expansion?
Well, that's a matter that the heads of state in their retreat, I'm sure, will address. But as you know, that the work on the expansion has started for some time, where ministers of foreign affairs or international relations have been engaged on that matter, looking at what would be the modalities for such expansion, what would be the qualifying criteria. So as 5 member countries, there has to be an agreement on how those are addressed, so that you can be clear as to why this particular country at this particular time is being accepted as a full member. However, it's important to also appreciate that you already have had an expansion when it comes to the BRICS Bank, that other countries are already members of the BRICS Bank who are not necessarily members of the BRICS family as we speak today. So there would be all those considerations, in my view, that countries will be assessed based on the vision and also the objectives of what BRICS wants to achieve. The case for agriculture, as you asked, for us, we would like to develop opportunities for exchange with a number of BRIC countries present today, but also possibilities where there is an expansion. That engagement would include technical exchange, exchange in research and development, research in technology, agricultural technology, as well as sharing our production systems as a country. Obviously, all of us are interested in ensuring that we increase our market access in the number of countries with whom we trade, including our BRICS member states, because we do believe that that trade amongst countries offers an opportunity for our farmers to be able to grow their incomes, but also for the country to grow their gross domestic product as part of agriculture's contribution to the GDP. You would know that even during the challenges of COVID, agriculture's performance remained very high because the decision that South Africa took, even at that time, was to ensure that agriculture remains an essential function that must continue to operate. Because we also do trade with our neighbors, so it was important that our neighbors do have access to food even during that period.
Thank you so much, Minister. The Minister there of Agriculture and Rural Development, Thoko Didiza. Very important issue that was touched on yesterday as well by the President is the technology in the agricultural sector and how that could have an impact on unemployment, inequality and poverty in the country. Very important one coming up a bit later on. Will BRICS be expanded? What decision was taken during the retreat of the heads of state of the member states of BRICS? Narendra Modi is saying that can't just expand for the sake of expanding. What conditionalities should be put in place? We're going to take a quick ad break. After that, the agenda continues.